Hi everyone.
So some people open the cameras.
Yeah, we've got all of you on Zoom. I can see you all because you're behind me on the screen, which is fabulous. So good morning. And thank you to all of you for coming in. As much as Oshra's thanking me, I'm thanking you because genuinely, I think in this time, a time that all of us in all our different ways, in whatever manifestation it is, all of us are feeling a million different feelings. And every minute it can be a different feeling. And for me personally, to be here in the room with you, to see your faces, to see that everyone still is here with us, is mamash something that really gives me chizuk.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot to say that in order to continue in the class and to get the link for Zoom, so we really ask that you sign up. From next week, it's going to be a different link. These were 2 weeks of trial of the classes. I don't think anyone has to try out Tanya, but we all love you, Tanya. A lot of people have signed up, but I'm just reminding everyone, Adi here put the link also for the sign up. If you need help, we're here every day. You could sign up in the office as well. Thank you, Tanya.
Okay, so last week I gave an intro. We spoke about what's going on in the situation. We're going to jump now back into our topic. I know that everyone has different sensitivities and different needs and everything else. Because of the fact that my Torah is always Torah Chaim, and because of the fact that the way in which I teach it always links to the situation, to what we're going through, obviously we're going to be bringing up various things along the way. If people have sensitivities, if people are saying to me, I don't want to hear about what's going on, then that's also okay. You can come to me afterwards, speak to me, give me feedback. I'm open to hearing everybody. I'm teaching the natural way that I teach. If that isn't right for you, or if you feel that it's too much for you, then you'll just let me know afterwards. Clearly, Sefer Bamidbar, what we've been speaking about over the last 2 years, and generally a lot of the things that I teach tap into the idea of option B, of resilience, of the idea of moving from chaos to order. These are all themes that I've taught for many years, and that, if I'm totally honest, I have to now really tap into myself in order to give myself the chizuk and remind myself of all the things that we've been learning together. And I think the Sefer Bamidbar, one of the things that we really looked at last year was that it's a fascinating fact that the people of Israel had to go through the Midbar before they became an ordered society. There was something about the wilderness experience. There was something about going through that chaos. There was something about being in that arena of nothingness that allowed them to then step into an ordered, structured society. And last time we spoke a lot about this idea that the whole of Sefer Bamidbar almost moves, is constantly oscillating between the idea of order and chaos. That the theme is always there. And I think kind of in an academic way, we were speaking about the idea that, of course, living life, right, being part of our experience as human beings, is that we're always oscillating between order and chaos. That in many ways, part of our, and we brought in a lot of people like Jordan Peterson and various other people, that part of our psychological makeup is to be able to navigate that place between order and chaos. Because on the one hand, order allows us to function. Without order, we can't function. Without, having routine, being set in our ways, having certain fundamental, cognitively, certain boxes, certain ideas, certain things that we are able to place, that allows us to function and to know what we need to do and to achieve goals. But chaos, apologies, my phone is actually not on silent. I'm just going to put it on silent. But chaos is chaos, or I should say, maybe even disorder. That can also be the root of creativity. That can be the root of, and very often is, a kind of, I should say, like a segue or a branch into being creative beings, into paradigm shifting, into being able to do something outside the box, into thinking differently. And that's why both of these things are required in order for us to live a fruitful human life. So I go back to where we began last time. We asked the question of Torat HaMidbar. Why is the Torah given in the Midbar? What is it about the Midbar? What is it about the imagery or the idea of the Midbar that is so intrinsic to Torah? And last time what we looked at is we kind of spoke, well, first and foremost, we brought Rabbi Sachs, and we spoke about the idea of the Midbar moving us from negative to positive freedom. The Midbar, the reason why, if you look at a parallel, there's a chiastic structure. Chiastic structure is A, B, C, B, A. There's a chiastic structure in the Torah. Okay, we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus in the middle, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And the parallel is between Exodus and Numbers, between Shemot and, what's that word? Chiastic, C-H-I-A-S. It's in your first sheet. It's in your first source, sorry. The first source of the sheet, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He speaks about the idea of it having a chiastic structure. Okay, and yeah, and the Sefer Bamidbar parallel Sefer Shmot. But there's differences. Sefer, if you look, and he very much shows us, Sefer Shmot is the journey from Egypt to Mount Sinai. Sefer Bamidbar is the journey from Mount Sinai to the banks of the Jordan, meaning they both are about the journeying. They both have complaints of the people. They both have the idea of the man. They both have a battle with Amalek. They both have Yitro coming. There's many parallels between them, but there's a big difference. Sefer Shemot is speaking to us about negative liberty. It's speaking to us about a people who have just come out of Egypt, they have freedom now from coercion. They have freedom from the threat of death. They have freedom from all of those things that come with being in slavery. But Sefer Bamidbar is about positive freedom. Because why? In the middle is Vayikra, Leviticus. What happens in Vayikra? Vayikra, we get our mission statement. At the end of Sefer Shemot, we get the Torah, and in Vayikra, we get the building of the Mishkan, we get the laws, we get the order, we get the way in which society is going to be structured so it can be a holy society, so that we can understand why God has taken us out of slavery. And then Sefer Bamidbar, that's where we begin, or we should begin, to take ownership of our positive liberty, to become people who understand why they have been released from freedom. But what happens? What happens is that the people are not able to move towards positive liberty. And we saw it last year. We went through many instances in which the two main instances were in chapter 11, which were the complaints, and I think it was I can't remember which chapter, 26, I think, which is the Meraglim, the story of the spies. Those two incidents basically derailed the positive liberty efforts, because the people essentially showed that they were not ready. Why were they not ready? They had not matured enough in a way to understand what liberty really was, to understand what real freedom was. And in many senses, they were still almost childlike in their outlook. And at the end of the story of the spies, we hear that generation are not ready to go into the land. So that's the outlook. That's what we've been talking about. This idea of the Midbar, why do they have to travel for 38 years in the Midbar? Because there is something about the Midbar that teaches the people about what it is to be free. And that's what I want us to be looking at over this year. We're going to be focusing on some of the main narratives in the second half of Sefer Bamidbar. The first narrative we're going to look at is the narrative of Korach. And one of the things we're going to see when we look at Korach, and this is so important, is the idea of speech. Now, speech has been what do I call it? It's been like an image that has followed the whole way through, a motif that has followed us the whole way through. If you remember, the people complain instead of speaking. Moshe we haven't seen yet, right? The incident of Moshe hitting the rock instead of speaking to rock. We had the murmurs all the time. There's this notion of speech, the Lashon Hara of Miriam. Speech is a very, very important tool to know how to convey my subjective internal makeup, my feelings inside, into universal categories that other people understand. But to do that requires a sense of maturity, a sense of understanding the power of speech. Now, when we look to the Meraglim, we already focused on this idea. In fact, we spoke a lot about the idea of the power of speech. We're going to come back to it again when we look at Korach, because in many ways, the Korach rebellion is also about speech, even though we think, and it is, and we're going to look at the idea, we think it's about the idea of equality, we think it's about the idea of who rules, but ultimately, it's also about the way in which Korach brings his complaints, the way in which he speaks. Today, in the world that we're in, we see that, and I'll never forget that Rabbi Sachs, in one of his, one of the last interviews that he gave, he spoke to a group of journalists before he passed away, and British journalists, and there they were asking him questions and he was responding. And one of them asked him something about, why are you such a prolific writer? Why do you write so much? And he gave, and those of you that are interested, message me afterwards and I'll send you the exact wording because it's way, way, way better than, in fact, I'm wondering if I actually have, in fact, I do, I have it, I know where it is. I'm going to read you exactly what he says because this to me is one of the most, in fact, I think it's one of the most powerful things I've read that Rabbi Sachs writes about himself, okay, about his own life. He says like this, he says, I'll tell you exactly why I write books. When I was a kid, I learned to speak in public. In those days, I could do it quite well. I could really move a crowd. And I thought that that was the most dangerous thing I knew because you can move them to truth or you can move them to falsehood. You can move them to love, but it's a lot easier to move them to hate. You can move them to feel threatened. You can move them to paranoia. I cannot begin to tell you how easy it is, and it made me ill. Now, that is a humble person. I still speak publicly, it's what I do, but I decided I'm not going to do this any longer as the carrier of what I have to say to people. I'm going to set it out in print with sources, with footnotes, with qualifications, wherever I feel it appropriate and say, now here it is. I'm not trying to persuade you of anything, just read it on your own and tear my arguments to shreds. That's why I wrote the book. He means books. But the point is that language, that speech, and we've seen it today, we're seeing it today. As much as we're fighting a war, a physical war against our enemies, we're fighting a war of hasbara, we're fighting a war of the media, of what we're trying to get out to the world, of the message of truth, of the message of good, of the message of life that the world don't want to hear. And even worse is the fact that we can argue whatever we want about the BBC, but the majority of people are not watching the news outlets. They're watching social media and they're being fed exactly what they want to see.
This is interesting. Want to hear?
Again and again and again. And therefore, and this is what I want to speak to about today, and therefore there is no ability to tap in to these people because they're not seeing anything other than what they're hearing. They're only hearing the echo chamber of their own voices. Now, this is nothing new. We've spoken about it before. Today, for us, it's literally a threat to our existence. And that's why I think the Torah, when the rabbis speak about Torah HaMidbar, one of the things they're saying to us is that what is the primary sense in the Midbar? The primary sense is the ear, not the eye. The eye in the Midbar is basically all the same. Everything looks the same. But animals, if you look at animals who are in the Midbar, what is it that is unique to animals of the desert? They all have massive ears, because hearing is the most important sense in the wilderness. And to me, even that, just that small thing, is one of the messages Chazal are trying to give us over about the Torah. The idea that the Torah is about what we hear, not just what we see. It's not just what you see. Seeing is not believing. We've spoken about that last year. It's also about listening and listening to the multiple voices, to the many sounds, to the many different things. So last time we spoke about this idea of what it is we looked at Erica Brown. We spoke about the idea of trying to build structures of human intelligence. That's what the Torah does in the Midbar. The Torah creates a sense of order in a landscape of chaos. We spoke about Erich Fromm, to have and to be. And we said the Midbar is a place of being, not a place of having. In the Midbar, nothing is possessed, but it's a place of being. A lot of people nowadays speak about the fact that they'll go to the Midbar and that will be where they're able to exist as they are, to be who they need to be. I want to go to our second idea, which is very, very interesting. When they talk about the journeys of Am Yisrael, if you look in source number 8, my dichtib, or Midbar Matana, they talk about all the places that the people of Israel travel towards. So they go from the Midbar to a place called Matana. אמרו לה, כיוון שעושה אדם את עצמו כמדבר שהוא מופקע לכל תורה ניתנה, לא במתנה, שנאמר וממדבר מתנה. The Gemara speaks about the fact that when a person makes himself like a midbar, okay, which is open, which is free, the Torah is given as a gift. It is a matana, okay, from the midbar to matana. Now, I want you to look at source number, source number 12. Ignore source number 9. Look at source number 12. Rabbi Yosef said to Rabbah, do not sit on your feet until you tell me an explanation of the matter. What is the meaning that is written from the wilderness? And this is a pasuk of the journeys that the people did, where they went, right, from Mimidbar, Mimatana, Matana leNachliel, Nachliel leBamot. Okay, from the wilderness to Matana to Nachliel to Bamot. Rabbah said to him, once a person renders himself like a wilderness, when a person makes himself like a midbar, the Torah is given to him as a matana. And from the wilderness, matana, once the Torah is given to him as a gift, right, Hashem gives it to him as a nachala. And then he owns it. Okay, first and foremost, we have to make ourselves a midbar. Then we receive the Torah as a matana. And then it becomes nachli el, nachala el. It becomes the nachala, the dwelling place of God. Okay? And then from nachliel, bamot. What is a bama? A bama is a high place. Only then do you go to the high places. Okay? Listen to what it says, which are elevated places. If he elevates himself and is arrogant about the Torah, the Holy One, blessed be He, degrades him, as is stated from Bamot to the valley. And not only is he degraded, but one lowers him onto the ground, as he says, and looking over Nishkafa, the faces of the wasteland, like a threshold that is sunken into the ground. And if he reverses his arrogance and becomes humble, the Holy One, blessed be He, elevates him, as it stated, every valley should be lifted. When Rav Yosef heard this interpretation, he understood that Rav was aware of the error of his ways in acting arrogantly towards his teacher and was pacified by Rav's display of humility. All of this came after there was an argument between Rabbah and his teacher, and then they understood when Rabbah gave that explanation that he had humbled himself. What is going on here? What is going on here is that I think first and foremost, again, this idea that when we come to the Torah, we need to humble ourselves. We need to make ourselves like a wilderness. We need to make ourselves vulnerable to the Torah. I've spoken about this many times before, but I think it's one of the most important things. Torah is vulnerable to us, and therefore we have to be vulnerable to it. Meaning what? Meaning the fact that the Torah is open to interpretation, the fact that we have Torah Shabbat al Peh, the fact that the Torah can be taken by human beings and interpreted through the prism of human cognition is a problem. It's a problem because it means it can be taken to any point. And the only means by which we should and can interpret the Torah is if we make ourselves a midbar. That's what rabbis are telling us. What does it mean to make ourselves a midbar? It means, number one, to be humble in front of the text, to say, I don't understand everything, I don't know everything, and I might have an interpretation and it also might be wrong. Humility in front of the text. Number two, Okay, to make myself hefker means to come to the text without any preconceived ideas, without a sword in my hand, without a gun in my hand, and saying, I want the text to mean this, right? This is my agenda for the text. This is my agenda for the Torah. Not to use the Torah as a weapon, okay, in any sense of the word, right? But to come to the Torah and to say, I want to really hear what the Torah has to say to me today. I really want to hear the message of the Torah today. Ariel Berger, I bought this source last time, but I think it's one of the most beautiful sources. Ariel Berger is one of the people recently, in the last few weeks, that I've been thinking about so much, has been Elie Wiesel. Because having studied Holocaust theology for years, one of the things that always struck me was the 2 decades of silence that came after the Holocaust. And not just that, what also struck me was, why did no one want the survivors to tell their stories? Why were their stories repressed? And I studied this. I spent a long time reading a lot of different opinions and accounts and historians, and particularly in America, who tried, and especially because my subject matter was Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, he said that he didn't ever hear the stories. His parents had family that were killed in the Holocaust. He says I just did a conversation with him about a month ago. It was after Rosh Hashanah, and he feels like a lifetime ago. And he said that he remembers once, I've never heard this story, he said he remembered once that a cousin of his mom came to them, and they told the kids to leave the room, and the kids had to leave the room. And he said he remembers standing by the door and kind of trying to understand. And then afterwards, his sister said to him, no, she was someone that survived the camps, and she was telling our parents about what happened. They didn't want us to hear. And only when he came to Israel in 1961, when it was he came on the eve of the Eichmann trials, did he finally understand the extent of the Holocaust, of what happened. His parents, who basically had family who were killed, did not speak about it. And to me, what was fascinating is that for 2 decades, there was silence theologically. No one spoke about it. There was no language to speak about it. That's what I feel now. I wrote this yesterday. I feel that at the moment, there's no language. It's too painful. We're still in the middle of it. There's no language. And Elie Wiesel has the most unbelievable essay called Why I Write. I highly recommend you look it up online if you can find it. If not, I have it. I can send it to whoever wants it. I wrote a Facebook post yesterday, and I quoted a part of it. I think it's one of his most, of all the things Elie Wiesel has written, I think that is one of the most amazing things he's written. Because essentially what he writes in it is that he cannot write. Really, he doesn't have the words. Really, it's impossible ever to use words to explain. But he has an imperative to write, because if he doesn't write, people will forget. And I think that what he does, and what Elie Wiesel has done, is that he's opened his vulnerability. He's opened himself up. He's made himself vulnerable, which is a very, very, very difficult thing to do, especially after so much suffering. But in doing that, he's connected all of us to something much bigger. He's allowed for connection. And Ariel Berger, who was a protege of Elie Wiesel, and he wrote a book called Witness. And in that book, he speaks about his time under Elie Wiesel, helping him, seeing who he was, what his life was. It's a fascinating book. And one of the things he really kind of shows in the book is the way in which Elie Wiesel taught his students in university, which, by the way, a lot of us don't, meaning it was a new insight of Elie Wiesel that I hadn't seen before. And one of the things he says is that Elie Wiesel was very open-minded and very much about hearing every single person and not repressing any opinion, that every person had what to hear and had what to give and here I'm going to read with you. He said he used to teach about the idea of the vulnerability of the text, but the vulnerability of the text as a meeting point between the reader and the text. And he speaks about it in terms of the battle of David and Goliath. Look what he says. Rather than collapse the distance between us, between our worldviews and our opinions. And again, here he was in a class in America with many, many different types of people, Jews, non-Jews, religious, not religious, okay, all different types of people.
Today in American universities.
Source number
They wouldn't
13.
let them speak today in American universities.
Maybe
It's
today.
going on, it's so awful.
I know. Things unfortunately have gone very, very bad. Rather than collapse the distance between us, between our worldviews and opinions, we need to sustain the gap, he says. In this way, we serve as helpers against friendly antagonists, partners in clarifying our thoughts. Many of us spend so much moral energy on promoting connection that we sometimes forget to truly celebrate difference. Okay, and again, this is such an important idea. We profess that all human beings are familiar to us. We claim to be so comfortable with different people, religions, ethnic groups, languages, skin colors, face shapes, that we no longer see them. There is a certain kind of jadedness that comes with such tolerance. Nothing surprises us anymore, and it's difficult to respect what you do not see. Just as he helped, okay, I'm going to stop there for a second because this goes back to what we spoke about at the beginning in terms of the chiastic structure. One of the things Rabbi Sachs speaks about is the chiastic structure of the Torah. And essentially what he's saying is that in any chiastic structure, it doesn't matter. You have like A, B, C, B, A. It can be A, B, C, D, C, B, A. Okay, it can be, but the most important part of the chiastic structure is the middle. Okay, because the middle, the others all parallel each other, but the middle is what is the grounding, it's the connection, it's what he's speaking about here, is that connection. Why is Sefer Vayikra the connection? Why is Sefer Vayikra the fundamental, we like to skip it. Who teaches Sefer Vayikra? I mean, really. They say you should start to, and by the way, it's also interesting, in the Gemara, what does it say? That when you teach kids, what should you start with? Vayikra. Why? Surely you don't want to turn them off. Why are we starting with Sefer Vayikra? Okay, but Eli Wiesel has given us the answer, and Rabbi Sachs in all his books has given us the answer. It's very simple. One of the things that makes the Jewish mission is that we are different. We are different. How are we different? Sefer Vayikra makes us different. We have laws that are only laws for the Jews, that make us or make our mission a mission of sanctity to our God. That's not to say, and here I want to be very clear because Rabbi Sachs was also very clear about this. That's not to say we are intrinsically better. I think today we would say we are intrinsically better than our enemies, but that's not to say that we're intrinsically better than another human being, but that is to say that we have an intrinsically different mission and a different relationship with God that makes our laws make us different. We have laws that create our difference. And one of our major missions is to keep those laws so that we can teach the world the dignity of difference, so that we can show the world to respect people who are different. Because as Eli Wiesel says, if we all merge into the same thing, then what's the point in tolerance bichlal? I don't need tolerance because you're exactly the same as me. I don't need pluralism because you're exactly the same as me. I don't need to respect you because you're exactly the same as me. No. The whole point is that I am different to you. I have a different relationship with God to you. The laws that I keep are the laws that God gave to me because I'm his nation of Israel. And you're something else, but you have different mandates. And this is my mandate. That's Sefer Vayikra. You want to know why we teach kids Sefer Vayikra? Because they need to know, first and foremost, what our mission statement is. And then they need to learn the history. That's what Rabbi Sachs is saying. And in my mind, that's exactly what Eli Wiesel was saying as well. Don't make everything the same. Because if you make everything the same, there's no point in our humanity.
I'm pretty sure that I learned this from you, but that was the sin of the Torah. I mean, I think that was one of the sins of the Torah Haflaga. They wanted everybody, they were fine as long as everybody was the same.
Yeah, we learned that.
And I think, especially today, it's so important to realize that that's the problem. We have to respect Tzemel Elokim and everybody, whoever you are, whatever your thing is, we still have to respect, and that's our challenge.
Exactly. Rabbi Sachs, in his book, The Dignity of Difference, begins his book with the story of the Tower of Babel. And he uses that to show that what was the sin of the Tower of Babel? They had one language and a oneness of things. And a oneness of things is that they wanted everyone to be the same. Now, unfortunately, our enemies, that's exactly their manifesto. Their manifesto is that everybody follows exactly what they believe. And the Jewish people are always and have always been a threat to that. Now, it's way beyond the scope of our class, and we're not even going to touch on why anti-Semitism is so prolific in every generation. But there's no question that one of the reasons is that we are a threat to the universalist agenda of many either extremist religions or just generally the liberal doctrine of universalism. Okay, and it's in some sense it's either side of it. It's a circle. They can't, people. I mean, I've heard some people say, "I don't understand these, extreme left liberalists. Why are they pro-Hamas? Do they understand that if they walked into Gaza, they would be killed tomorrow? Do they understand?" And but we do understand why, because in some senses they're both allied. They're both aligned to the same philosophy, even though it's expressing itself in totally different ways. One's expressing itself in a radical religious way, and one's expressing itself in a radical universalist way. But they're both the same philosophy, which is a philosophy is that we do not make space for difference. Okay, Judaism is the religion of difference. That's why it's in the middle. That's why Vayikra is in the middle of the whole of the Torah, because it represents the ultimate difference. The laws of even the idea of the Leviim and the Kohanim within ourselves. It's not the Leviim and Kohanim are better than anyone else. It's that they represent a certain role that has to be done by a certain group of people. And we, as the people, have to respect that difference. Meaning there's many, many different layers here. But yeah.
Even the fact that, that we came out of Egypt as Shvatim. Hashem could have, the breaking us up into 12 different groups was really unnecessary. We could have just been one people. We could have just been on Israel and not have us spoken of. But Hashem very intentionally maintained the Shevet structure, and that was maintained throughout the Midbar, it was maintained throughout Eretz Israel. I think very much to drive home this point that we're still brothers. You may be Reuben, I may be Yehuda, but we're still brothers.
Beautiful.
We function in the same.
Well, I just want to check people on Zoom. Did you hear that comment? Can you hear the comments? No. Okay, so I'm just
No.
So what Bella said was that the idea that the fact that we're Shvatim from the beginning, and we remain Shvatim throughout, shows this idea that even within Am Yisrael there are different people, different Shvatim with different colors, different roles, different flags. And what do? They encamp around the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the center, and the diversity encamps around the center, and that is the message. And I pray to God that we learn from the threat from outside will teach us to learn that message once again inside. So I want to go back to Ariel Berger, what he says. So he says that's what Eli Wiesel used to say, right? Let's respect our differences. And then he said like this: just as he helped us to see one another with fresh eyes, Professor Wiesel helped us to see familiar literature anew. So now what he did is he takes that kind of more meta philosophy of Eli Wiesel, right, which is the idea of the diversity of individuals, the idea of dignity of difference, quite Rabbi Saxian in that sense. And now he applies it to the text, okay, which is amazing. He says, for students who grew up reading Genesis in church or synagogues, the challenge was to help them forget what they thought they knew. To help them forget what they thought they knew. Okay, I hear that also, by the way, in books. The other person who writes a lot about that is Leon Kass, okay, in his book, because he said that he came to it with a totally fresh new eyes, and that allowed him to see things that other people who hadn't come to. I want to say another thing. I read recently, I wish I could find it because I read it somewhere and I can't remember where I read it. It was one of the most amazing posts. And I have to say a lot of things that people are writing are amazing, and a lot of things, for me personally, I find extremely difficult and I don't connect to in any way whatsoever. But this was phenomenal. Someone wrote it, and I have to rack my brain to see where I found it, about the fact that last Shabbat, every single category that we had placed, every single cognitive box that we had created over the last 50 years was shattered. On the right, on the left, on everything was shattered. Because we had become so like entrenched in our way of seeing things. It reminds me of Hanan Ben Ari's song Wikipedia. Has anyone heard his song? I highly recommend go and listen to it and look up the words because it's a very fast song, but listen to the words where he essentially says, don't define me through Wikipedia, okay? And he says, and he goes through every category of the way, and he wrote this song a long time ago, okay? But it's exactly that. We'd all very much, me included, even in terms of, and I'll be totally honest, one of the biggest things for me was the shattering of certain narratives that I realized that really, I'm not going to go into all my own things, but there were certain narratives that right at the beginning, that really I felt were shattered. And to build those things up again is very difficult, but that's exactly the point. We're not meant to necessarily build them up immediately. And I think one of the things when we come to the text of the Torah, of course it's important. All of us are encumbered individuals. We spoke about this last time as well. All of us are conditional individuals. None of us are free-floating atoms. We all come to a text. We all come to a life. We all come to another human being with our preconceived biases, of course. Okay, and we all do so because all of us have grown up in a certain way and we have seen certain things and we've gone through certain experiences, and that's okay. It's okay as long as we're conscious of that fact, and that sometimes we are able to humble ourselves. Exactly what the Gemara was talking about. Before the Torah is given to us as a nachala, first we have to see it, we have to humble ourselves in the wilderness. We have to go through the wilderness because the wilderness humbles us. The wilderness is the place in which there's such a vastness and so much awe that you feel so little that there's nothing else but humility. And only then do we see the Torah as a gift. And once the Torah is a gift, then it can be a nachala from Hashem. And once it's a nachala from Hashem, and we've gone through that whole thing, then we can go to Bamot. Then we can go to the top of the mountain and say, this is the Torah. But we first have to go through all of those things. So to me, it's about the idea, and Elie Wiesel said, it's about the idea of coming to the text and saying to the text, I'm coming to you in all my humility. I'm trying to see you with fresh eyes. I'm trying to read you in a way in which you're going to speak to me and I'm going to hear the multiple voices. Not that I'm coming with my agenda, preconceived ideas and imposing them upon you. Now, that is not to say that we don't come with a wealth of material, a wealth of commentary from the years. Of course we do. But even that we need to look at with fresh eyes. I think about Aviva Zornberg and the way in which she interprets the Midrashim, and I think it blows my mind, because when I was a child reading the Midrashim, I certainly did not read it the way Aviva Zornberg reads it. And there's something so deeply profound and powerful in that. So to me, that's the vulnerability. That's the coming, that's Torah Hamidbar. That's coming to the Torah Hefker. It doesn't mean that I'm not Tanya White. It doesn't mean I haven't had all my experiences, but Dafka, those experiences allow me to humble myself. They allow me to see the Torah in a new way. So listen to what he said. He said like this. Our job as educators, one of our jobs as educators, is to help students get what they so they can stay alert to the text's nuances. Wiesel's conceptions of a battleground demands that we shed our armor rather than use it for protection. When we studied the biblical story of David, he pointed to a powerful moment in the text. David, on his way to fight Goliath, was given the king's armor. For a battle this unequal with life and death stakes, armor makes sense, but David removed the armor, for it didn't fit him. The image has stayed with me as a symbol of a key concept, that vulnerability is the greatest weapon if you are brave enough to use it. Now, again, I'm not here talking about the battlefield in reality, okay? And I'm not talking about our situation now. I'm talking here about, he's talking here about the idea of connection. And I know many of you know I love, yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Many of you know now that I'm a fan of the popular psychologist in America, Brene Brown, who studied, who researched vulnerability. And one of the things she says is that for real and true connection to happen, you have to have vulnerability. And one of the things that she uses, one of her phrases that she uses all the time is, does anyone know? armor up. She always says, we've armored up. And if we armor up, there's no connection. She says, you have to remove she actually uses the word armor. She says, remove the armor in order for the connection to happen. She says, all of us have armored up. And the truth is that today, all of us are armoring up because we're in a very, very vulnerable state. And there are moments for armor. Armor is useful. We need to have armor sometimes, but we also have to know when to remove it. And the time comes, there are times that will come where we will have to remove it. At this particular moment, no. But when we're coming around, and here I'm talking about the text in particular, when we're coming to the text, we need to armor down. We need to take the armor off. We need to come to the text and we need to try and really engage and have a connection with the text. So that's the second idea that I wanted to look at. The third idea I want to look at is one of the major themes in Sefer Bamidbar, which we spoke about last year and which we're going to be coming back to again this year. The idea of order and chaos. Okay, because once again, the wilderness is a place of chaos. And what we have in the wilderness and what we have in the whole of Sefer Bamidbar is an oscillation between order and chaos. If you look at the first 11 chapters of Sefer Bamidbar, they're all laws about creating society. It's about order. It's about imposing order onto a slave mentality. It's about imposing order onto the desert landscape. It's about the ability to construct something in the face of disorder. And here I want to bring in a few slightly different texts. And I want to speak about this idea of the permanence and the novelty of Torah. But I want to see it with this idea of the chaos and order. And allow me to bring in Sherry Mandel. Sherry Mandel, and again, the question we're asking here, let me just go back to what we're trying to address. The question we're asking here is, why was the Torah given in the Midbar? The Chazal keep going back to this idea of Torah HaMidbar. So again, I want to try and understand, why is the Midbar so important for the Torah? And I want to share with you this idea, exactly this idea of the notion of joy and vulnerability, to take the notion of vulnerability and to try and understand where we can find creativity and joy in that specific area. In doing so, I brought for you Sherry Mandel. Sherry Mandel, as we know, is an incredible woman. She founded the Kobi Mandel Foundation after her son Kobi, who was, this was like one incident. If we were doing this 2 weeks ago, we would have said, what an absolute tragedy. He was hacked to death by terrorists near Efrat. And now we're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people in the same situation, thousands. But Sherry has written some amazing books. One of her first book, which is a very well-known book, is called, someone remind me?
The Blessings of a Broken Heart.
Something about broken heart.
It's called The Blessings of a Broken
That's her first
Heart.
book. And then the other book she wrote after, which is the one I'm bringing you here, is called From Chaos to Celebration. Okay, and listen to what she writes. We who have suffered and grown and flourished may experience a surprising sense of joy. And by the way, when I read this again, I obviously prepared these sheets before what happened. When I read it again, reading her just gave me hope that if she can do it, and if she's done what she's able to do, then we will be able to do it for all of these people as well. So listen to what she says. If you were to visit Camp Kobi, you would see that when bereaved children are happy, their joy is even greater than that of other children. In transcending our pain and converting it into a mission, a destiny, we have experienced a tremendous breakthrough. We do not deny sadness. It will always be present. Sorry. Yet our sense of joy expands. We experience joy not only in our expansions, but in realizing the true nature of existence. One of the happiest holidays in Judaism, I swear I wrote this before, I prepared this before, okay? One of the happiest holidays in Judaism, Sukkot, is a time of joy where we also recognize our own vulnerability. Sukkot teaches that our dwelling on this earth is temporary and insecure. When we live outside, we leave not only our comforts, but our feelings of permanence. We cannot lock a sukkah, and we are vulnerable to the sun, the rain, winds, animals. But there is a great joy in being in a sukkah. We are out of our routine, out of our homes, exposed. In the Zohar, the Sukkah is referred to as the shadow of faith. Those of us who have dwelled in loss know that we are vulnerable, but we are also privileged to comprehend our true human condition, our humility and impermanence. I prepared this before the Chagim, way before the Chagim. When did she write this? The Chaos and Celebration, I think, was written, if I'm not mistaken, it was recently, 2020, as in not so long ago. What she's saying here? What she's saying here is that there is something about the notion of vulnerability that creates a much deeper living. And actually that there is a sense of joy, obviously, after one has been through that moment of total rupture. But there is a sense of joy that is so much deeper and so much more profound once someone has gone through, once someone has tapped in to deep vulnerability. And that's our prayer.
And I was also very affected is that everything that took place in the desert on October 7th. That whole party, even though it wasn't a religious thing, it had certain vulnerability.
Yeah, it was in the desert. It's a lot to think about. If we look at source number 15 from Sefer, and here I've just brought for you, I brought for you a whole different variety of sources about the Sukkah, because I think that this idea of the Sukkah is why do we celebrate Sukkot? Sukkot is because of living in the desert, right? Our time in the desert. So to look at Sukkot and to understand the essence, I honestly didn't know this when I was preparing it, that it would all happen on Sukkot and the Midbar and everything. I had no idea. Maybe it's too raw, maybe it's, I don't know. But the reason I bought it was because when I was thinking about the notion of the desert, and I was thinking what Chag celebrates this experience of the desert, the Chag that celebrates the experience of the desert is Sukkot. We celebrate Sukkot because, look at source number 15. ולקחתם לכם ביום ראשון פרי עץ הדר, כפות תמרים וענף עץ עבור וערבי נחל, ושמחתם לפני אדוני אלוהיכם 7 ימים. You take the four, the lulav, the 12, right, the arba minim, and you celebrate for 7, and celebrate b'simcha, v'samachtem, celebrate with simcha for 7 days. וחגותם אותו חג לאדוני 7 ימים, בשנה חוקת עולם דרככם, בחודש השביעי תחגו אותו. בסוכות תשבו 7 ימים, כל האזרח בישראל ישבו בסוכות. Everybody will sit in Sukkot for 7 days. למען ידעו דורותיכם, כי בסוכות הושבתי את בני ישראל, בהוציא אותם מארץ מצרים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Why do you do it? To know that I put the people in Sukkot when I took them out of the desert. What is Hashem saying to us? It's not just the idea of the Sukkah. It's the idea that I took them out into the desert to teach them what it is to live with vulnerability, what it is to be dependent on God, what it is to understand that I am the God that took them out of Egypt and I'm looking after you in the desert. And this is what life is about. Life is about the desert experience. Life is about fragility. Before you go and you build your societies and you become people and you become entrenched and you build homes and you think you have permanence and you have illusions of grandeur, before all of that, you have to have an education in humility. You have to have an education in vulnerability. You have to have an education in being dependent on God. Only then can you go into Eretz Yisrael.
Being out in the desert, intense, but also in the Makom Achim, like even in the Cheder Mugan, like, you know what I mean? Like Hashem is in charge of everything, from wilderness to being inside of the house.
The idea of being in the wilderness and being vulnerable and knowing that Hashem is protecting us, and being in the Cheder Mugan, where also we have to have that faith in God. I think there's a lot to say here. I'm really I'm being consciously careful not to impose theological understandings and interpretations. I think we are way too early to do that. I think we are not qualified at this moment to do it. I think we're in the middle of it. And I personally, everyone has to do what's good for them. And everyone has to do what works for them. But I personally don't feel that I can do that at this moment. But I 100% respect people that feel that they need to impose a certain interpretive schema, and that I think is fine. Okay, so then we get to the Gemara in Sukkot. Yeah.
It's interesting that even in this, it talks about this is both your diversity, right? It's the four meaning in the desert.
Yes. The Arba Minim that come together in the desert, for sure, in the Sukkot. Beautiful, also. Okay. Then in the Gemara, and I brought you the whole long Gemara, but really the reason why I brought it for you is very simple, okay? Not to show you the ins and outs of it, but you can read it in your own time. But essentially, the Gemara here speaks about the idea that there's always a theological underpinning to every argument in the Gemara, to every discussion. Okay, there's always a theological underpinning. What are the rabbis trying to tell us? What are they trying to tell us here? And here the argument is, what makes a sukkah kasher and not kasher, right? What makes the sukkah, something that one can use and one can't? And one of the words that keep coming up are the words arai and keva, right? Is it keva? Is it permanent? Or is it arai? Or is it temporary? Okay, these are the two words. I'm going to very, very quickly race through it. Again, we're not looking at the details, but I want you just to understand the arguments that are going on here. Rava said that the halacha is derived from here in Sukkot, you shall recite for 7 days. The Torah said for the entire, we saw 16 for those that missed. The Torah said for the entire 7 days, emerge from the permanent residence in which you reside year round and reside in a temporary residence, okay? Which is dirat arai, a temporary residence, the sukkah. In constructing a sukkah up to 20 cubits high, a person can render his residence a temporary residence. As up to that height, one can construct a structure that is not sturdy. However, in constructing a sukkah above 20 cubits high, one cannot render his residence as temporary residence. Rather, he must construct a sturdy permanent residence, which is unfit for use as a sukkah. Okay, so what's the argument here? The argument here is very simple. At what level does the sukkah become permanent, and at what level doesn't? And what are we searching for? We're searching for something that is not permanent. Okay, we do not want permanency. Abaye said to him, but if that is so, then he constructs a sukkah with steel partitions, placed roof over them, and it wouldn't be fit for a sukkah. And then he goes on, I'm going to skip. Okay, and then just if you look at the kind of the last 3 sentences, however, in a case where one constructs a sukkah more than 20 cubits high, a height that a person typically constructs a permanent residence, even when he constructs it in a less sturdy fashion, like a temporary residence, he does not fulfill his obligations. So even when, right, one builds it 20 cubits high, okay, but it has other things that make it more permanent, like steel girders and things like that, it's totally not kasher. Okay, so what is the Gemara? What essentially is the Gemara trying to tell us here? I think that once again, the essence of Chag Sukkot, the theological message of Chag Sukkot, is the idea that we need to feel vulnerable. Because when we're in a house, in a sukkah, that is not fixed, that is not permanent, we will experience our vulnerability in a much deeper way. That's essentially what all of these arguments are about, okay? And obviously I brought in Brene Brown. And Brene Brown speaks a lot about this idea that even in our happiest moments, we often feel dread or fear. And we often imagine the worst case. Because part of human nature is that we feel this constant oscillation between permanency and fragility. And I think now more than ever, so many of us, so many mothers that I've spoken to feel that when they're embracing their children, all they're thinking about is these terrible, and it's so difficult to live like that. And yet it's so much part of experience what vulnerability really, really is. She says like this: to love someone fiercely, to believe in something with your whole heart, to celebrate a fleeting moment in time, to fully engage in a life that doesn't come with guarantees. These are risks that involve vulnerability and often pain. But I'm learning that recognizing and leaning into the discomfort and vulnerability teaches us how to live with joy, gratitude, and grace. We need happy moments and happiness in our lives. However, I'm growing more convinced that the pursuit of happiness may get in the way of deeper, more meaningful experiences like joy and gratitude. And here I want to speak for a second. I'm just going to stop here for 1 minute and say that it's not a surprise that Sukkot is called Chag Zman Simchatenu. It's known as the Chag of Simcha. Why? Because dafka in our vulnerability, that's where the joy is. That's where we're meant to find the joy. So listen to what she says. I know from the research and my experiences that when it comes to parenting, what makes children happy in the moment is not always what leads them to developing deeper joy, grounded confidence, and meaningful connection. In The Gifts of Imperfection, I quote Anne Robertson, a theologian and writer, on the difference between joy and happiness. She explains that the Greek word for happiness is makarios, which was used to describe the freedom of the rich from the normal cares and worries, or to describe a person who received some form of good fortune, such as money or health. Robertson compares this to the Greek word for joy, which is kero, I think. Kero was described by the ancient Greeks as the culmination of being and the good mood of the soul. Robertson writes, kero is something that the ancient Greeks tell us that is found only in God and comes with virtue and wisdom. It isn't a beginner's virtue, it comes as the culmination. They say its opposite is not sadness, but fear. Remember when Yaakov is about to go and meet Esav, and the text tells us, V'yireh Yaakov yitzar lo me'od. Okay, he's about to go and meet Esav, his arch enemy, and he is extremely fearful. V'yireh, he was super fearful. V'yitzar lo me'od, and he was narrowed. And narrowing happens when we fear. And here I'm going to take it to two different areas. One of the things that happens when we fear is that we can no longer see outside our own vision. We really are, you talk about the idea of the Am K'Sha'oref, the negative connotation of an Am K'Sha'oref is the people that can't move their necks. Okay, when I have a stiff neck, I can't move, and therefore they're Am K'Sha'oref because they were slaves and their lives were filled with fear. They were a people that couldn't paradigm shift. They couldn't see outside. They could only see one way of seeing reality. And that was when they created the golden calf, that was dependency on something. Okay, and God says there in Am K'Sha'oref. Now we've also interpreted it in a positive way. We're a stiff-necked people, nothing's going to stop us in our mission. Obviously, there's two ways to understand it. But this is exactly what Brene Brown is saying, that the opposite of joy is fear, because fear paralyzes us. Now, on the one hand, I feel as a nation, we've had many moments of fear, and we're in one of them now, very much so. And the prayer that all of us should be praying is that that fear does not paralyze our leaders and the decisions and the way of thinking, that they are able to move out of the yatzal, of the narrowness, and to be able to see and to be able to recognize that all the various options are on the table, and they need to do that and not be in the moment of fear. But to take it to where we are, okay, which is the idea of the text. Very often when we are scared, when we fear something, we will not allow ourselves to expand for vulnerability, because vulnerability means that we can make mistakes. Vulnerability means that things can that there's pain, and that things can get destroyed, okay? And that's part of, remember, I always give you the analogy of the letter. To me, that analogy is like one of the major things, that the tradition, the Torah Shebaal Peh, Torah Shebechtav, is like a letter being passed from generation to generation. And there's two options. One option is we keep the letter closed in the envelope and we pass it on because we fear that we'll damage the letter. But what happens is that we pass it on, and really the letter doesn't speak to us anymore. And at some point, someone just gives it up because they're like, what does it even speak to? The other is that we open the letter up and we make the letter vulnerable. But in doing so, we find in the letter meaning. We find in the letter something that speaks to us. We find something that we connect to because we've opened it up. We can't connect to something if we don't open ourselves up. If we're armored up, there's no connection.
Which is what Ralph Denny tried to do with that.
I'm going to speak about that in a minute when I get there, because yeah, 100%. That's also about the idea of the monopolization of the text, which I want to talk about. So first and foremost, when we're coming to the text, we can't fear. Yes, we have to be humble, but there's a big difference between humility and fear. Okay, and that to me, if you look at the Rambam beautifully, and it's speaking about this idea of permanence and impermanence. That's Torah Sheba'al Peh and Torah Shebichtav. Torah Sheba'al Peh is permanent. We have it. It's written. Torah Shebichtav is the idea of the continual interpretive act that human beings do to the text. And Torah Sheba'al Peh has to be fluid. It has to be dynamic. What does it mean? It means that there's a danger. And the danger is that humans can get it wrong. But if we come to it as Torah HaMidbar, if we come to it with humility, and we come to it with an open ear, and we come to it to hear the text and not to hear our own agenda, then hopefully we will be able to hear the truth of the text. And the Rambam beautifully connects this to Sefer Bamidbar, because he says in Sefer Bamidbar, listen to what he says, the whole of the Sefer is a book that deals only with commandments meant for a particular time, that stood for them for that particular time during the periods when they were in the desert. Okay, and he continues and he speaks and he says there are no laws, I'm not going to read the whole thing, there are no laws in the book that are permanent laws. Now, this isn't 100% true, right? Because there are laws in the Sefer Bamidbar. For example, the Nazir and the Sotah, there are laws that continued afterwards. But I think what the Ramban was saying here was that he was giving us much more of a theological message than a literal message. He was saying that Sefer Bamidbar is a book about what Torah is about what it is to live as human beings with the Torah. And he is saying that the Torah itself, the whole of the Torah is fragile. The whole of the Torah is not permanent because humans have the capacity and the ability and the mandate to interpret the Torah. Now I want to read with you quite a long section from the Gemara in Chagiga, which speaks about this idea of whether the Torah is permanent or impermanent. Okay, and let's just read it through together, and then I'm going to leave 5 minutes at the end for questions. Okay, and we'll come back to David Hartman. Who is like you, the people of Israel, one nation land? The Gemara asks, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah also commented. I don't know why there's some things that are bolded. I took it from Sefaria. For some reason, Sefaria bolds some things, and I'm not quite sure, but anyway. Also comments in his lecture and talk, it is written, the words of the wiser as goads and as nails well fastened are those that are composed in collections. They are given from one shepherd. Okay, so the words of what's a goad? A goad is it's a kind of an animal that pushes all the animals into a certain area. Okay, so it like moves the cattle. Okay, the words of the wiser as goads. They're the ones that are moving, and as nails. They're permanent, right? Why are matters of Torah compared to a goad? To tell you that just as this goad directs the cow to her farrow to bring forth sustenance for life to the world, so too the words of Torah direct those who study them from the paths of death to the paths of life. The Gemara asks, if so, derive the following from the same analogy. Just as this goad is movable and not rigid, so too matters of the Torah are movable in accordance with circumstance and are not permanent. Therefore, the verse states nails, which are permanent. The Gemara further asks, if so, one can explain as follows. Just as this nail is diminished in size and does not expand as it wastes away over time, so too matters of Torah are gradually diminished and do not expand. Therefore, the verse states, well fastens Nitu'im, just as the plant Nitiyah flourishes and multiplies, so too matters of Torah flourish and multiply. Those that are composed in collections, Ba'alei Asufot, these are the Torah scholars who sit in many groups and engage in Torah study. There are often debates amongst these groups as some of these sages render an object or a person ritually impure, and these render it pure. These prohibit an action and these permit it. These deem an item invalid and these deem it valid. Lest the person say, now how can I study Torah when it contains so many different opinions? The verse states that they are all given from one shepherd. One God gave them, one leader, Moshe, said them from the mouth of the master of all creation, blessed be he, as it is written, and God spoke all these words. The plural form words indicates that God transmitted all the interpretations of the Ten Commandments. Since the sages invariably utilize the Torah itself or the statements of the prophets as the sources for their opinions, there is a certain unity to the study of the Torah, despite the numerous explanations and applications. So too you, the student, make your ears, right, like a funnel, and acquire for yourself an understanding heart to hear both the statements of those who render objects ritually impure and the statements of those who render them pure, the statements of those who prohibit actions and the statements of those who permit them, the statements of those who deem items invalid and the statements of those who deem them valid. Okay, this is in my mind, a super important Gemara, super important extract from the Gemara. What is it telling us? First and foremost, it's saying to us that the Torah stands between the idea of permanence and impermanence. It stands between the idea of order and fragility. Okay, and that in some senses, the Torah contains both. It has a central unity. That's the words of God. That's the Torah Shabbat, the Shabbat. That's the unity of God's words to Moshe. That's our foundation. That's the nail. But the goads, that's the rabbis that can move us from place to place according to the circumstances, according to what we need. Now, all of us know that we are a unique religion. There's very, very few religions. In fact, I don't even know if there are any other religions that have both a written law and an oral law. And what makes us unique is that when there is a written law, very often it has to be, it's given, the word of God is given and it remains and that's it, right? Okay, obviously there is interpretation because that's how it works, but there isn't a tradition of a mandate of oral interpretation. The Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral law, is a divine mandate to human beings to be partners in the interpretive act of the Torah. But what does it mean? It means that we have to be very careful about how we interpret the Torah. And what's the Gemara saying here? The Gemara is saying here is that there are going to be times where there's going to be opposing opinions. And what do we need to do? We need to be like the Midbar. We need to listen. We have to make our ears as a funnel, like those animals in the Midbar whose ears are like funnels, and listen to every opinion. Ultimately, we're going to have to act. Ultimately, we're going to have to decide at what moment and in what situation we choose the opinion that's going to reign at that moment. But why do we have all these opinions? So that in another circumstance and another situation, we can go back to that opinion and say, now that opinion is what we need. Okay? Again, I go back to what I was speaking about. To be 100% fixed in your categories, in your ideas, in your conceptual scheme of the world is not what the Torah demands of us. The Torah demands us not to be 100% fixed in our conceptual categories that dictate the way in which we act in the world. That's what the Gemara is telling us here. And David Hartman, and with this we'll finish for this week, Rabbi David Hartman, in his book called A Heart, Many Rooms, speaks exactly about this idea. The whole book is about it, but I just brought you one. I'm just going to read a few bits of it. He says there's a beautiful metaphor in the Tosefta that describes the kinds of religious sensibility that the Talmud tried to nurture. Make yourself a heart of many rooms and bring into it the words of the house of Shammai and the words of the house of Hillel, the words of those who declare unclean and the words of those who declare clean. In other words, what does that mean? Become a person in whom different opinions can reside together in the very depths of your soul. Become a religious person who can live with ambiguity, who can feel religious conviction and passion without the need for simplicity and absolute certainty. I think this is one of the hardest things. And again, I say it openly, all of us, myself included, everyone, I think here in Israel, has to a degree forgotten to have that heart of many rooms. And it doesn't mean that I'm not unequivocal in my opinions. It just means that I'm humble enough to understand that there may be other truths out there that might also have some sense of truth, some sense of permanency. Maybe not now, maybe in the future. That's what the Gemara is telling us. Keep all of those opinions alive, because all of those opinions are necessary. Because the act of interpretation means that I open myself like a midbar and open my ears like a funnel to all of those opinions. In this type of interpretive tradition, awareness of the validity of contrary positions enhances rather than diminishes the vitality and enthusiasm of religious commitment. So while the law may be decoded according to the views of one teacher or school of thought, alternative views are not discarded as if falsified, but are retained and studied and may even become law at some later date. I'm going to just skip to the bottom paragraph. I would even say that there was a distinctive sense of humor that typifies the classical Jewish tradition, a sense of humor and therefore humility about your certainties, about what you believed could not be otherwise. In all my years of study with Rabbi Joseph Soloveitch, I never once heard him call someone a heretic or dismiss a soundly argument opinion as illegitimate. You argued, you discussed, you disagreed with intensity, but you understood that you were defending a human point of view, not the final words of God. And even then, we would not hesitate to reprimand God for exceeding the limits of divine authority in the domain of halachic debate. Revelation gives you the word of God, but the interpretive strategies necessary for implementing that word are not in heaven. And therefore, we have to have Torah HaMidbar, because Torah HaMidbar makes me hefker. I become ownerless. I need to let go of owning all those, monopolizing all those views that I believe are 100%, and allowing myself to open myself up to other views. Now, again, it's a very narrow bridge. We've spoken about this before, because of course one has to have a sense of principles. One has to have a sense of ideology. One has to have a sense of what is true. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily negate my ability to listen to other people. So we're going to continue. There's a beautiful thing I found just recently by Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cardozo that I want to share with you. I'm going to finish it next time. And next time, we're also going to look at the outline of Sefer Bamidbar. We're going to go over, for those that, I know many of you were here last year, but for those that weren't, we're going to go over some of the themes that we looked at last year, and then please God start with looking at Korah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Here.
Any questions? I didn't leave. Yeah.
Let's assume that the big bar is dead. You know, that there is nothing. But the mid bar, when you go into the mid bar is alive. And you only have to look at the hills of east of Jerusalem after a rainy day, and looks at it's on the sand. All of a sudden, something flowers, and it's looking like a little water, and we call that Torah.
100%.
Goes to the mid bar, so that it's essentially
As
void.
Yeah.
There is something latent there.
Totally. Totally. It's the potential of the midbar, which you don't see anywhere else, which I think in many ways, that's exactly what it was. We spoke, I mean, in the previous class, and we're going to go over it next time, but we spoke about the idea of the midbar being liminal space. And liminal space, by the way, is a very dangerous and fearful area, but it's also an area of great ripening. It's an area of great potential. And that to me is what the midbar is. The midbar is exactly what you said. It's the place of potential. And then the question is, what do we use it towards? So yeah, 100%, I agree. Thank you, definitely. So that, oh, yes, 100%, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the reasons of society, you don't have, you are out there.
Be careful here, it's wet. I'm gonna go and get
You're
a.
out there with the neighbors, you walk together, interdependence, and that's the same thing, it's linked together, that's the environment, so you have to rely on each other. Eva aura dedans שמה, איפה בחדר השני? עוד לא כאן, נכון? לא כאן, אוקיי.
Sorry, she's showing people how to do it.